So for today's class, I'm going to give lecture about qualitative technique in doing research. Okay, in earlier session, you have class about research proposal. You already learned how to prepare research proposal, how to conduct literature review. So once you finalize your objective, your scope of research in your proposal, then you need to identify which method, which technique that you're going to adopt to achieve your objective. Each objective needs to be achieved either using qualitative or quantitative method. Okay, so you will talk about qualitative, and then in next class you will have you will be exposed on quantitative method. Okay, now let's see what is qualitative method. Qualitative method, qualitative research can provide insight which is not possible to elucidate with purely quantitative data. A means for exploring and understanding the meaning individuals or group ascribe to social or human problems. Study which we applied qualitative method when we want to study human behavior and social world. It helps us as a researcher to understand the world in which we live and why things are the way they are. Qualitative research answers questions on why people behave the way they do, how opinions and attitudes are formed, how people are affected by the events that go on around them, how and why cultures have developed, and the difference between social groups. So compared to quantitative is more to statistic, number. So when you need a in-depth study for your research, then qualitative is the right method to be adopted, to be applied to achieve your objective. From the example of the answer question that I mentioned just now, it shows that you can get in-depth result when you applied qualitative. See the behavior, the opinions. You cannot get opinions from survey unless you already stated all the opinions there, and then the respondent will just pick which one. But by applying qualitative, for example interview, you meet them and then they will give their opinions, elaborate and explain more compared to survey. Okay, what are the strengths of qualitative method? Qualitative research is done in natural settings. It's emphasized on informant interpretations and meanings. It seeks deep in understanding of informant's world, humanizing research process by raising the role of the research and high levels of flexibility in research process. Okay, when we look at this comparison, simple comparison between qualitative and quantitative, the approach for qualitative is inductive while quantitative is deductive. The goal for qualitative research is that generate hypothesis, while quantitative is breed and test to test the hypothesis. The setting for qualitative is natural and for the quantitative is experimental. Sampling that being used for qualitative is purposeful. Most of the time is purposeful, and for quantitative it's random sampling. Data collection for qualitative is for example, it's like interview, observation, we have case study, we have focus group, and for quantitative, example is like survey, questionnaire survey, administrative or clinical data. When we apply qualitative, the data analysis is iterative interpretation, and quantitative, how we analyze data is through statistical tests and modeling. But also there are research that combine both qualitative and quantitative. Maybe when they have like 3 objectives, there's a combination techniques to achieve the objective. It depends on your objective. Okay, the keyword is qualitative. For qualitative research, the keyword is to explore, go deep, and seek to understand. And for quantitative research, the keyword is to quantify, validate, and make decisions. Okay, what is qualitative data? For example, you look at this book case. The findings is very in detail and in depth. The finding mentioned that it is made of wood, was built in Italy, it is deep brown, has golden knobs, smells like oak, and has a smooth finish. See, you can see the detail like the smell, the color, where was it built, okay, the material. If this is a quantitative data, it will mention the number of the bookcase and then the dimension, the size of the bookcase, maybe material. Okay, for qualitative research designs, there are 5 major types of qualitative research designs, which includes phenomenology, narrative, ethnography, grounded theory, and case study. I will explain, out of these 5 designs, I will explain 4 designs, the first 4 designs, and then the case study will be explained by another lecturer. The first one is phenomenology. Okay, what is phenomenology? Is where we study phenomena. We need to describe something that exists as part of the world. It might be an event, a situation, and an experience, or a concept. For example, we experience back pain, so it's a phenomena, or events like Independence Day celebration. So it's a case study, and we want to study about that event. So it's a phenomena. Or tsunami, where we want to study about tsunami. So it's like an event, situation, or an experience. So it begins with the acknowledgement that there is a gap in our understanding. It may not necessarily provide definitive explanation, but it does raise awareness and increase insight. Okay, the second design is narrative. Narrative is basically about biography, where you tell about life history, oral history, the term assigned to any text, document or archival material or discourse or text used within the context of a mode of inquiry in qualitative research, with a specific focus on the stories told by individuals. A life history is a study of an individual's life and how it reflects cultural themes of the society. While oral history, the researcher gathers personal recollections of events, their causes, and their effects from an individual or several individuals. Okay. For narrative, the researcher needs to collect extensive information about the subject of the biography. As a method, it begins with the experiences as expressed in life and soul stories of individuals. The writer, using an interpretive approach, needs to be able to bring himself or herself into the narrative and acknowledge his or her standpoint. Okay, the third one is ethnography. The term means portrait of people. Okay, ethnography means portrait of people. It is a methodology for descriptive studies of cultures and people. For example, cultural parameter is suspected of affecting the population response to care or treatment. Okay, well, if we're doing this, it requires extensive field work by the researchers. Data collection normally includes formal and informal interview on several occasions and observation. It is extremely time consuming. Okay. The researcher needs to interpret data from the perspective of the population under study. Results are expressed as they are expressed by the subject themselves. This study might be problematic when researchers are not familiar with social norms and language. Because you want to study about people and culture, so if you don't understand the culture and the society, it will be very hard to get a good findings or results because you don't really understand your subject. Grounded theory. Okay, main feature is the development of a new theory through the collection and analysis of data about a phenomenon. Okay, you have one phenomena, and then you want when you analyze the phenomena, then you develop a new theory based on your data collection and your analysis. It goes beyond why when you mention what phenomena, why it's not like the earlier one, phenomenology. Okay, it goes beyond phenomenology as the explanation are genuinely new knowledge and are used to develop theories. Okay, so it's a bit different about phenomenology because you are gaining new knowledge and for you to develop new theories. Various data collection techniques are used like literature review, documentary analysis, interviews, and observation. Okay, so after I explain the research design for qualitative data, there are 5, like I mentioned earlier, there are 5 major. It's not only 5, but these are the major designs that being used by researcher when they are applying qualitative techniques or qualitative research, when they are using qualitative technique or when they are doing qualitative research. Okay, so now we go to the method of collecting qualitative data. How we are going now? We already decided, okay, I want to use qualitative technique for my research. So now what are the methods in order to do your qualitative research? Okay, it's basically a direct interaction with individuals, either one-to-one interaction or interaction with a group. Okay, so the methods that normally being used is interviews. There are few types of interviews I will explain after this. Focus group discussion, observation. So data collection is normally time consuming. Benefits of of these methods include richness of data and deeper insight into phenomena under study. Remember I mentioned earlier the difference between qualitative and quantitative. It's the depth of the findings, or for our research we need to get in-depth understanding or in-depth finding. That's why we applied qualitative technique. So that's why, of course, it's time consuming, because you need to have like one-to-one interaction. You need to go and interview. The more you interview, the more time required. Compared to questionnaire survey, you just share, or you just distribute your questionnaire at the same time. Let's say you decide 1st March you want to distribute, so on the 1st March you will distribute through email or WhatsApp, online distribution, or face-to-face distribution, and then you will wait to get the response. But for interviews, you need once you have an appointment, you need to spend time like 1 hour, 1.5 hours for each respondent. Depends on how many respondents required for your research. And also observation. It needed time for you to observe some event or situation, and so on. Okay, so again, this picture just show what I mentioned earlier. It's one-on-one qualitative. Among the qualitative research method is one-on-one interview, case study, focus group, ethnographic research, observation, process of observation, and record keeping. Okay, so let's see one by one. The first is interviews. Okay, there are few types of interviews. It's not just like one interview, you go and meet people, ask them questions, that's it, that's interview. No, there are few types of interviews. First one is structured interviews. Structured interviews, they have same questions in same way, limited range of responses. Okay, means you already have you design one interview or questionnaire, and then you will use the same question to all of the respondents. I mean, if you have let's say 5 questions, you will go and ask the respondent, and then for, let's say you have 5, 10, all of them, 5 of them will get the same question, and then they will give answer. So you cannot change the question. It means it's fixed. It's fixed. You will just ask the same question to all of the respondents. Okay, and then normally the discussion is not long, because sometimes it's just a yes or no question. It's like guided question. Okay, so it's limited. The second type of interview is semi-structured interviews or focus interviews. Okay, it's a series of open-ended questions, provide opportunities to both researchers and respondents to discuss certain topics in more details. Okay, this is like you're having a main question, okay, and then you ask the respondent the question, but the respondent will have opportunities to share or explain or elaborate more on the particular topic, okay, because it's semi-structured. And then sometimes they are also giving information which are not in your question list, but it is an important finding. That's why it's a series of open-ended questions. Okay. Okay, and then the third one is unstructured interviews or in-depth interviews. This is discussing limited number of topics. First question in the interviewee's previous response. Okay, so we have the earlier one, structured, which is fixed. The question is fixed, and then semi-structured, where you have question, but you allowed to add. You allowed the respondent to give explanation or elaboration more than what you asked earlier. Means even though it's not in your question, but when they explain it, it is an important findings. Okay. Unlike the first one, the structured, if the respondent give answer or explanation that not related to your question, then it is not accepted. Okay, so the third one is unstructured interview. This is more in-depth interview. Okay, you are discussing limited number of topics, and then the question that the interviewer will ask is depend on the interviewee's response. Once if the interviewee's response, for example, response like response A, okay, so the interviewer will ask question related to the A's answer. Okay, if the respondent give like B answers or C answer, D answers, then we will have a different question based on their previous response. Okay, so this is what we call unstructured. It's more in-depth compared to the other two. Okay, but normally for students, we will use the semi-structured or the structured interview to get response from the respondent. Okay, because unstructured interviews is quite is normally just for those who have experience, wide experience in doing interview, because we have tendencies to go anywhere because you are not prepared. Okay, so interview should be fairly informal, because if it's in a formal setting, the response will be limited because it's formal, and then they are not comfortable to share their experience, especially on sensitive topic. So the situation should be an informal setting. Okay, require careful consideration and preparation, because sometimes, like I mentioned earlier, when the topic is sensitive, you must consider what question to be asked. Then you must prepare. For preparation is needed for unstructured interviews and semi-structured interviews, because you must be ready whenever they give response or explanation. You must know what question you need to ask, especially for unstructured interviews. Different with structured, where it's already there, so you just follow question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Okay, below are the types of interview questions. Okay, for introducing question, can you tell me about? Okay, specifying question, can you give me an example of direct question? Okay, earlier you said how does that relate to indirect question, structuring question. Okay, you can refer to this slide. Okay, there are 4 types of interviews: email interviews, web interviews, personal interviews, face-to-face, which is face-to-face, and telephonic interviews. Before this, before COVID-19 pandemic, students used to have personal interviews or face-to-face interviews when they're doing their research. But nowadays, because of COVID-19, we are having more web interviews and telephonic interviews. Okay, this is the current situation. Email interviews is not so, it's not encouraged to do email interviews because it's like it's basically for structured, or it's good for structured interview because the question is fixed and it's easier for the respondent to give their feedback. But for unstructured and semi-structured, it's quite difficult because you need to, I mean, when they give the answers, the question depends on what is the answers, right? So when you have email, it's already fixed. So that's why I said it's suitable for structured interview. Okay, the first one is interview. The second one is focus group discussion. It's basically to collect information from groups of people rather than a series of individuals. Okay, interview, you go and meet one-to-one, or maybe a group, maybe 2 people, but normally one-to-one interview. Okay, but for focus group is when you want to collect information from a group or series of individuals. It can be used when resources are limited. You have a limitation with your resource, for example, financial. You cannot go to maybe one person in KL and then another one in Singapore, another person is in Melaka, another person is in Penang. So when you're having a focus group discussion, it's all of them, and then you conduct that's a collection. Okay. It also can be used to identify a number of individuals who share a common factor. It is desirable to collect the views of several people within the population subgroup, and group interaction among participants has the potential for greater insights to be developed. Okay, so it's different. Sometimes when interview you see one-to-one, but you need a discussion. You don't want a direct answer from just one person, but you need a discussion. So let's say you give one topic, so all of them will discuss. So during the discussion, when one person gives feedback, another person will give feedback, will respond to the feedback. So it will have more insight to the particular topic rather than you just meet one people and get the answer. Okay, sometimes the researcher want a collective answer or discuss findings. Okay. Characteristic of a focus group. Group size usually 6 to 10 people, not more than that. If more than 10 people, it's some people will just silent because it's too many of participants. Okay, so the ideal is not more than 10 people. Okay, and then the second characteristic, several focus group discussion should be run in any research. It should be wrong to rely on the views of just one group. So that's why I mentioned it earlier. Some research need to have a collective opinions, not just only from one group or from an individual. That's why they have mentioned here several groups. Okay, members of each group should have something in common. Maybe, or let's say you want to study about legal issues on contract, legal issues on certain procurement system. So maybe you want those who have knowledge in legal, in law, maybe lawyer, and may use pre-formed groups. Data collection and analysis is for focus group. The data collection and analysis is time consuming. It requires certain skills like facilitation, moderating, listening, observing, and analyzing. Just imagine you have 10 people discussing certain topic, then you must really focus. You know how to facilitate them, how to listen to their feedbacks, observation, and then to analyze. So that's why it's mentioned time consuming, because many works need to be done. Okay, what are the keys to successful focus group? Participants contribute equally. That's why it will be hard if you have more than 10 people, because some people will just be very vocal, very loud. Some people will just silent, because some people, they are not comfortable in big group. Maybe in a group of 8, group of 7, group of 8, they can voice their opinion. But when more than that, they prefer to just be silent and listen. So we don't want that to happen in the focus group. And then the other case is participants feel comfortable to interact openly. The moderator's questions may make a natural exchange. Observation. Another method for qualitative technique is observation. Okay, it might be the only method to collect information in certain conditions. Observation of people versus observation of environment. Observation can also serve for verifying or nullifying information collected through other methods. Okay, techniques for collecting data for observation. It's a written description. The researcher may miss to record, may focus on one thing and miss equally or even more important things. If you only depends on written description. For video recording, no need to take notes, review time after time. Recording may affect the behavior of the people under observation. Okay, so have pro and cons. Okay, because if you have videos, it will be easier because you can review it time after time, but it may affect the behavior of the people under observation. And then fixed camera may limit the range of possible observation. Maybe you want to observe certain area, and then your camera just focus on one area. So when the subject or people are out of your camera's range, then you cannot see what's happening. Okay, so there are pro and cons. Either you just want to write or you want to record. Okay. Yeah, for example, sometimes when we speak or when we have discussion with friends, without video we are very casual, but then when we know somebody is recording us, it will make us more formal and hesitating, and then not comfortable. So this is what they mean by affective behavior. Okay, another way to collect data is through photograph. Good way of collecting observable data of phenomena which can be captured in a single shot or series of shots. Photographs of building, neighborhood, dress and appearance. Okay, and then documentation similar to written description. Okay, this is like policy document, annual report, minutes of meeting, codes of conduct. And then you just refer to this document for your observation. Okay, for observation, it's not only in qualitative. In quantitative also, we have observation as one of the techniques that can be used. But the technique is different for both observation. Okay, for example here, for qualitative observation, the way we describe it, the finding is a bunch of beautiful round and smooth glass marbles. Okay, when we see these 5 marbles, that is how we describe in our findings. Okay, but for quantitative, the findings will be 5 marbles of 1.5 cm diameter each. Okay, this is, you can see, you understand, I mean, the difference between qualitative and then quantitative. It depends on your objective, what you want to achieve. Okay, so handling qualitative research data, recording versus not taking. Okay, like for interview, sometimes normally students will ask permission. They want to record because they are afraid of losing information, important information, if they just use not taking. Okay, and sometimes students doesn't have the skills to listen the key points or main points when the respondent gives feedback. So students prefer to record, but there are respondents that are not comfortable when you record them, so they don't give permission to be recorded. They prefer you just to take note. Okay. Transcribing qualitative data, procedure for producing written version of interview. Okay. This is for recording. When you record, so you need to transcribe the qualitative data. Also not taking written version of interview. It's a time consuming. Estimated ratio of time required is 5 to 1. And it's produced a lot of written text. Just imagine the respondent is explaining or answering your question or doing the interview for 1 hour. Just imagine there will be a time consuming task. You need to listen. It's not like you listen for 1 hour and then you write. It's not like that, but you need to listen first, maybe 5-10 minutes, and then pause You write down important points, and then start back, start again, listen. Okay, so that's why it's a time consuming. Transcribe may not be essential for each interview. This is for tape analysis, taking notes from playback of tape recorded interviews. Consideration should be given to tone and inflection. By listening and noting the intensity and feeling in the interviewee's voice, it is possible to detect positive, negative, optimism, certainty and uncertainty, enthusiasm and reluctance. Okay, this is when you ask question, you can identify through their thought, especially when the topic is sensitive, maybe about humanity, about politics. So the tone will be different when you are angry, when you are not satisfied with something, the way you explain, when you eager to deliver your point. So it will have different tone and inflection. So this is one skill also where the interviewer needs to have when you interview respondents. Constant comparative analysis, data collection and data analysis occur on ongoing basis. Each interview is analyzed before other interviews take place. Finding of first interview is incorporated in the following one. Later interviews might be completely different from the initial one. Okay. Now, you already conducted your data collection. Okay. So now is the analyzing part. It involves summarizing data and presenting the result in a way that communicates the most important features. As quantitative research, you are interested to discover the big picture in qualitative research as well, but by using different techniques. We start labeling or coding every item of information to recognize different and similarities between all different items. No system for pre-coding. Needs a method of identifying and coding items of data which appear in the text of transcript. All the items of data from one interview should be compared with other interviews. Same procedures are used for qualitative data collected through interviews, focus group discussion, observation, and documentary analysis, since all are concerned with analyzing text. Okay? Because through all of this, you will analyze the text or the written findings. Okay, now how to present the result of your qualitative research. Look at the themes and categories and structure the results accordingly. The structure can be set out at the beginning as a list or diagram. Themes are the main findings of the study. To support findings, evidence are presented at direct quotation from respondents. This is different from quantitative, where quantitative you present your result will be in a number form, in the percentage, in the form of percentage. So it's just like, okay, 30% of the contractor said they are not gaining profit. 20% said they gain profit. So that's how the quantitative research result will look like. But in qualitative, it's more like okay. So for qualitative, it will be more text or more explanation, justification, elaboration on your findings. Okay. That's why it's very important for you to get feedback from your respondent during the interview, because If like it's just yes and no answer, it will be very hard for you to do your analysis and then to get a good result. Because the idea of doing qualitative is to gain in-depth understanding or result. So if it's very brief or very limited answer, it's not an in-depth. It's not an in-depth finding. Okay, a range of quotation should be selected. Strength of opinion or belief, similarities. This is example of quotation that can be used when you analyze or present your result. Similarities between respondents, differences between respondents, the link between different categories, and then conclude. You must have a conclusion about your result when you present. Okay, before this we talk about method. First is the research design, and then the method on technique method that being used for qualitative research. So now is the sampling. Who are we going to ask? Who are the respondents? Okay, so there are a few things for sampling. First is generalizability. To generalize the properties of the sample to the wider population and to make conclusions regarding the wider population. Second is pragmatic reasons. Applied research in organization often has resource constraints. Sampling reduces burden on resources, for example, time and money. Usually not feasible to contact the whole population. Third is destruction of test units. Some research projects, for example, quality testing, require the destruction of the items being tested. Example, testing cars for safety. Okay, important issues. Properly selected samples are sufficiently accurate in most cases to make statements about the population. Even when population has considerable heterogeneity, larger samples can provide data of sufficient precision upon which to base conclusions. In quantitative research, the characteristic of the sample and actual sample size is more important than the relative size of the sample compared to the population. Meanwhile, in qualitative research, the aim is not statistical representativeness, but representativeness in the sense of gaining access to the full range of views, themes, or possibilities in the population. Okay, once the decision to sample has been made, the researcher must identify the target population, must carefully define the target population so that the proper source from which to collect the data can be identified. Okay, the population is any complete group sharing some common set of characteristics. What are the populations? It can be finite or infinite. The group will wish our research to comment upon. Okay, now types of sampling. First, you identify who you want to be your respondent, that is sampling. Now, there are few types of sampling. First, probability sampling. Okay. This sampling facilitates generalizability, occurs when elements in the population have an equal probability of being selected in the sample. Logic depends on selecting a truly random and statistically representative sample that will permit confident generalization from the sample to a larger population. Okay, this is best for quantitative research, but still we can use in qualitative research. Convenient sampling. Okay, example for convenient sampling is interviews on the street, simply asking for volunteers using client and clinical or business setting. It's quick, convenient, less expensive, not generalizable at all. Okay. Okay, this is the most used sampling in qualitative, purposeful sampling. Okay, purposeful sampling or judgment sampling. Sometimes the only meaningful way to investigate, useful when you need a targeted sample. You know who you want to ask, and then that's why you choose a certain group to be a targeted sample. So this is not like unlike the first one where it is generalized, more generalized, the probability sampling. Okay, it includes snowball sampling, starting with a small group and asking for further context, useful for sensitive topics. Okay, because you not simply just choose anyone. Okay, first you have a small group, maybe 3-4 groups, and then from this group you ask them their further contact that related to a particular topic, who can answer the topic, and normally a sensitive topic. So you not just simply choose anyone. Quota sampling. Population is stratified and numbers within strata are decided. Contexts are met until quotas are full. Quotas can be proportional or non-proportional to the population. Okay, the criteria is the appropriate sample design will depend on the following criteria. Degree of accuracy required, local versus national project. Yeah, if you have a local project, then you just need to ask local maybe. But if it's international or national project, then the different respondent is required. Need for statistical analysis, and then resources. You have time and money. You must consider your time and money as well. Okay. So sample size in qualitative studies, adequacy of sample depends not so much on the number of cases, depends on the proper specification of the cases to be analyzed. Redundancy in information is often a sign that the sample size is adequate.